Kade Lawson didn't expect the storm to take half the roof off his shed, let alone land an entire oak tree across someone else's driveway. Rain still dripped from the brim of his worn baseball cap as he parked his old pickup truck at the curb and stared at the mess. Branches, the size of his arm, blocked the long, winding driveway of a house that looked like it belonged in a movie. White columns, stone steps, and about a dozen windows with rain-streaked glass. He'd never seen anyone come or go, but he'd passed it every day on his way to drop off his daughter at school. And now here he was, soaked to the bone, holding a chainsaw. "Daddy, are we going to help them?" A small voice piped up from the passenger seat. Kade turned toward his 6-year-old daughter, Kaia, who clutched her stuffed bunny to her chest. Her dark curls were frizzy from the humidity. He nodded. "Yes, baby, we're going to help. Whoever lives here's probably stuck." He stepped out, hoisted the chainsaw over his shoulder, and squinted at the sky. The storm had passed, but the air was still heavy. As he approached the downed tree, he noticed the front door swing open. A woman stepped out. She looked like she belonged in a magazine. Tall, poised dark hair pulled into a sleek ponytail. She wore a black blouse tucked into tailored slacks, completely out of place in the middle of post-storm chaos. But what struck him wasn't her clothes. It was her eyes. She looked tired. But then she saw him and her whole face shifted, confused, curious, and then soft. "Hi," she called. "Are you from the city?" Kade adjusted the chainsaw. "No, ma'am. Just saw the tree down and figured someone should do something." She blinked, clearly thrown. "You're just helping." "Yeah, I'm Kade. My daughter's in the truck. We live a few blocks over. I build decks and fix roofs, that kind of thing." The woman hesitated. For a second, he thought she might tell him to leave. Instead, she stepped down the stairs. "I'm Vanessa, Vanessa Cole." He gave her a nod. "Nice to meet you. I'll get this cleared so you can get out if you need to." "I thank you." She looked stunned, like no one had ever offered to help without asking for something. Vanessa Cole was used to men wanting something. Her time, her attention, her connections. What she wasn't used to was a man in a threadbare flannel shirt, soaked from head to toe, clearing her driveway like it was second nature. She watched as he started the chainsaw and began working, slicing through the thickest branches like it was his job. She hadn't even told anyone she was back in town. After a decade of running one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country, she'd returned to the estate she'd inherited from her late mother. She needed quiet, space. But she hadn't expected this man with kind eyes and a little girl in the front seat of a truck that clearly hadn't seen a car wash in years. After 20 minutes, Kade paused, wiping sweat from his brow. Vanessa walked down, holding 2 bottles of water. "Thought you might need this," she said, handing him one. "I appreciate it." He took a long drink before glancing toward the truck. "Can she use your restroom? I think she's been holding it since we left the store." Vanessa nodded. "Of course, I'll take her." Kade opened the door and lifted Kaia out. She clung to his neck until he whispered something in her ear and pointed to Vanessa. Kaia gave her a shy wave. "I'm Kaia," she said softly. Vanessa smiled. "Hi, Kaia, let's go inside. I've got cookies too." By the time they returned, Kade had cleared the last of the debris and was loading the cut branches into the back of his truck. "You didn't have to do all this," Vanessa said as she stepped onto the porch, Kaia beside her munching on a chocolate chip cookie. "I know," Kade said, tossing the last branch, "but I wanted to." Vanessa studied him. Something about the way he said it so simple, so honest hit her in the chest. "Let me pay you," she said. He shook his head. "No need." "Kade." "Really? I didn't do it for money." He glanced at Kaia, then looked back at Vanessa, his expression unreadable. "I do okay. Not great, but we get by." Vanessa felt her throat tighten. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because it had been so long since someone had done something for her without expecting anything in return. Or maybe because the way he looked at his daughter, gentle, protective, made her feel something she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. "You sure?" she asked. "Positive," he said, tipping his cap, "but thanks for the water." He walked to the truck, opened the door for Kaia, and buckled her in. Vanessa stood watching, not moving. "Kade," she called as he climbed into the driver's seat. He looked at her. "Would you ever consider helping me with some repairs inside? The house is old. There's a leak in the hallway, and maybe a few other things." He hesitated. "I'm booked this week, but could come Saturday. Bring Kaia if that's okay." Vanessa nodded. "I'd like that." She watched him drive away, the truck kicking up gravel as it turned the corner. She stood on the porch long after he was gone, the cookie tray still in her hand, her heart beating faster than it had in years. She had no idea why. But she had a feeling something had just changed. The hallway ceiling dripped steadily into a metal bowl, the sound sharp against the silence of the house. Vanessa stood beneath it, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. She'd spent years managing teams of hundreds, overseeing contracts worth millions, yet somehow this leak was the thing she couldn't get under control. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 a.m. She hadn't realized she was waiting until her stomach fluttered. When she opened the door, Kade stood there in a clean shirt and a tool belt slung low on his hips. Kaia clutched a paperback chapter book to her chest, her backpack slipping off one shoulder. Vanessa stepped aside. "You're right on time," she said. "I try to be," Kade replied, his tone easy. "Hope you don't mind I brought some supplies. Didn't want to assume what you had." "I have nothing," Vanessa admitted. "The last time I attempted to fix something, I cracked a tile." Kaia wandered into the foyer, her eyes wide as she took in the high ceilings and ornate staircase. Vanessa knelt beside her. "You can hang out in the sunroom if you'd like," she said. "There are puzzles, books, and I think the Wi-Fi works again." Kaia gave a small nod. "Thank you." Vanessa watched her go, then turned back to Kade. "The leak's upstairs, right above the hall landing. I'll show you." She led the way, conscious of how quiet the house had become. When they reached the landing, Kade frowned at the darkened patch of ceiling. "Looks like it's coming from somewhere near the attic," he said. "Mind if I check it out?" "Please do." He disappeared through the narrow attic door, and she heard the creak of old floorboards above. Vanessa moved to the window and looked out over the grounds. The garden was overgrown, the stone path barely visible through the tall grass. "You've got good bones on this place," Kade called down, "but someone did a lazy patch job up here. I can fix it, but I'll need to get some better materials." "I'll cover whatever you need," she said. When he came back down, he had dust on his jeans and a wooden beam in his hand. This piece was wedged under the insulation, completely rotted through. Whoever lived here before probably didn't know. "I grew up here," Vanessa said before she could stop herself. "Left after my mother passed, it's been empty for years." Kade didn't ask questions. He simply nodded and tucked the beam under his arm. "I'll do a temp fix today, stop the leak. Then we can talk about next steps." She followed him back downstairs. Kaia sat curled up in the sunroom corner, reading aloud to herself. Her voice was soft but confident. "She's really bright," Vanessa said. "She loves stories," Kade replied, "especially ones with queens and dragons." "I used to be the same." He glanced at her then. "You don't strike me as someone who stopped dreaming." Vanessa's chest tightened. The truth was she had. Somewhere between the startup launches, the boardroom betrayals, and the sleepless nights chasing perfection, she'd forgotten what it felt like to want something for herself. "You'd be surprised," she said. Kade wiped his hands on a rag. "I get the feeling a lot of people underestimate you." They tend to stop once, put them on the other side of a conference table. Kade grinned. I'll stay on the side then. She allowed herself a small laugh. It felt unfamiliar but good. Later, while Kade worked in the attic, Vanessa brought Kaia a small tray with sliced apples and cheese. The girl looked up with wide eyes. Thank you, Miss Vanessa. You can just call me Vanessa, she said, and you're welcome. Kaia picked up a slice and tilted her head. Do you live here alone? I do. Don't you get lonely? Vanessa sat beside her, caught off guard. Sometimes, but I like quiet. Kaia nodded like she understood. Daddy says quiet is where the good thinking happens. Vanessa smiled. Your dad's a smart man. When Kade finally came back down, he looked exhausted but satisfied. It's holding for now, he said. I'll be back with the right lumber tomorrow. She hesitated, then said, stay for lunch. I don't want to impose. You're not, I'd like the company. He glanced toward Kaia, who was now building a puzzle on the rug. If it's all right with her, he said. Kaia beamed, yes please. Vanessa led them into the kitchen. She hadn't cooked for anyone in years, but she found herself chopping vegetables for a simple stir-fry while Kade set the table without being asked. The ease of it caught her off guard. So, Kade said as he poured water into tall glasses, what brought you back? Vanessa paused, the knife still in her hand. I needed a break, the kind you can't take in the middle of a corporate war. He raised a brow. You're in business. I run a company, or did. I'm still deciding. Kade nodded like that answer made perfect sense. You don't seem like someone who quits. Maybe I've just never known when to stop. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Or maybe you never had someone remind you you're allowed to rest. Her hands froze on the cutting board. They ate together at the wide oak table, sunlight warming the hardwood floors. Conversation flowed easily from Kaia's favorite book series to the best grilled cheese in town. Vanessa barely noticed the passing of time until the clock struck 3 and Kaia began rubbing her eyes. I should get her home, Kade said softly. Vanessa walked them to the door. As Kaia hugged her goodbye, Vanessa looked at Kade. Tomorrow. I'll be here, he said. When the door closed behind them, she stood in the silence of her house, the warmth of their presence lingering in the air. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel so empty. Vanessa watched from the second-floor balcony as Kade's truck pulled into the circular drive, headlights cutting through the early morning fog. A stack of lumber filled the truck bed, and Kaia sat in the passenger seat, her face pressed to the window, eyes wide as always. She descended the stairs with unhurried grace, mentally calculating how many hours she could afford to spend away from her inbox. Her assistant had called twice the night before once to inform her that the board was pushing for an emergency meeting, and again to let her know that a journalist had caught wind of her sabbatical. She'd ignored both. The front door creaked open before she reached it. I hope you're not planning to carry all that wood in by yourself, she said as she stepped outside. Kade paused with a beam balanced on his shoulder. I've got help, he said, nodding toward Kaia, who was already halfway out of the truck with a smaller piece in her hands. Vanessa raised a brow. Child labor. Voluntary, she insists. Vanessa bent and extended a hand as Kaia approached. Supervisor privileges come with cookies. Kaia grinned. I accept. They worked like a small, practice team. Kade carried in supplies through the side door Vanessa had unlocked for him, while Kaia followed with a clipboard Vanessa had given her, dutifully checking off each item like it was a mission. Vanessa led them through the house to the back stairwell, where the ceiling had begun to peel from the water damage. The scent of damp plaster lingered in the air. I'll need a few hours up there, Kade said, eyeing the exposed rafters. Might get loud. I've got noise-canceling earbuds, Vanessa replied, pulling them from her pocket, though I don't use them often. He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. You don't strike me as someone who blocks things out. Only the things that don't matter. She left him to work and took Kaia into the library, where morning light filtered through the tall windows. Vanessa retrieved a chess set from one of the cabinets and placed it between them. Do you know how to play? Kaia tilted her head. My dad taught me a little, but he always forgets what the horse does. Vanessa smiled. It's called a knight, it moves in an L shape. They played slowly, the silence between moves filled with quiet concentration. Halfway through the game, Kaia leaned in and said, You have a different voice when you talk to Daddy. Vanessa paused, her fingers hovering over a rook. Do I? You sound softer, Kaia said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Vanessa leaned back in her chair. Maybe he brings it out in me. Kaia nodded, satisfied with the answer. He does that. The sound of hammering started overhead. Vanessa checked her watch, almost noon. Are you hungry? She asked. Kaia nodded enthusiastically. They made sandwiches together in the kitchen, peanut butter on one side of the counter, roasted vegetables on the other. Vanessa sliced apples with the precision of a surgeon, while Kaia arranged them in a spiral pattern on the plate. When Kade finally came downstairs, his shirt was streaked with sawdust, and his hands were rough from work. Vanessa handed him a glass of water before he could ask. I owe you a new ceiling, he said, drinking deeply, but the leak's patched, properly this time. You're not bad at this, Vanessa said as she offered him a plate. Thanks, he said, eyeing the food. Didn't expect lunch. It's a working lunch, you're on site. They sat at the breakfast nook, the three of them squeezed onto the cushioned bench. Vanessa watched the way Kade broke his sandwich in half and gave the bigger side to Kaia without a second thought. She noticed the way his eyes scanned the room not in judgment, but in quiet interest. You've seen a lot of houses, she said. Enough to know which ones used to feel like homes. Vanessa met his gaze, and this one. He glanced at the high ceilings, the molding, the long-forgotten family portraits still hanging in the hallway. Feels like someone's trying to remember how to live in it again. She didn't reply. Kaia broke the silence. Can we feed the geese after? You saw the pond, Vanessa asked. Kaia nodded. From the library window, there's like 20 of them. They come around once a week, keep oats stored in the mudroom. Kade looked at her amused. You feed wild geese. They're persistent and loud. Kaia clapped her hands. Can we go now? Vanessa led them out the back door to the overgrown path that wound toward the water. The air smelled of moss and damp earth, and the pond shimmered under the weak sun. True to Kaia's report, a flock of geese waddled near the edge, honking with anticipation. Kade stayed behind as Vanessa and Kaia walked closer. She handed the girl a scoop of oats and watched as Kaia tossed them expertly, laughing when the geese rushed forward. She's good with animals, Vanessa said over her shoulder. She's good with everything, Kade said, but she doesn't always believe it. You do. I have to, I'm all she's got. Vanessa turned to him. That's not true. His jaw tightened. Her mom left before Kaia could form words. I haven't heard from her since. Vanessa's throat tightened. I didn't know. He nodded. I don't usually mention it, but I figure if we're going to keep showing up in each other's lives, it's fair for you to know. She looked at him, really looked this time not just at the man who had fixed her ceiling or made her laugh across a kitchen counter, but at the father who had done it all alone, with no safety net and no roadmap. I'm glad you did, she said. He exhaled slowly. What about you? She hesitated. I built something that everyone wanted a piece of, and once they had it, they didn't need me anymore. So I stepped away before I forgot who I was. Kade didn't offer comfort. He didn't offer advice. He just nodded, like he understood in a way that didn't need words. Kaia ran up to them, cheeks flushed. They're following me. That's because you're the Goose Queen now, Vanessa said. Kaia's eyes lit up. Can I be knight and queen? You can be anything you want. As they walked back toward the house, Kade fell into step beside her. Are you always this generous with titles? He asked. Only when they are earned. And what about me? He asked quietly. Vanessa looked at him, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. I haven't decided yet. He gave a low chuckle. Fair enough. They reached the porch steps. Kaia darted inside to fetch her puzzle from the sunroom. Kade paused at the door. You're different when she's around. So are you, Vanessa said. They stood in silence, the wind rustling the trees above them. Then, softly, she added, Stay for dinner. His eyes searched hers. You sure? I've never been more sure of anything. By the time Kade stepped into the garden room, the last rays of evening light were spilling across the floor like liquid gold. Vanessa stood by the open French doors, sleeves rolled to her elbows, a glass of something amber in her hand. She didn't turn when she spoke. Did she fall asleep? He leaned against the doorframe, arms loosely folded. Out cold before I finished the second story. I laid her down in the guest room, hope that's all right. She glanced at him over her shoulder. It's more than all right, she's safe here. Kade's voice softened. She doesn't fall asleep easily unless she feels that. Vanessa nodded once, then motioned to the table. You hungry? There weren't any candles or fancy plating, just 2 bowls of stew and warm bread in a woven basket between them. He sat across from her, letting the quiet settle before lifting his spoon. You made this, he asked after the first bite. She offered the faintest shrug. I used to watch my housekeeper do it when I was little. Figured I'd try. The rosemary's from the side garden. He took another bite. You're braver than most people I know. In what way? Letting someone new into your space, especially someone with a kid who talks to birds. Vanessa gave a low laugh. She's welcome anytime. I mean that. Kade set his spoon down. There's something I should ask, and I want you to be honest. Her expression didn't change, but she straightened slightly. All right. Are you planning to go back, to the boardroom, to everything you walked away from? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for her glass and took a slow sip. I thought I would, she said eventually, that this was just a pause, but lately, I'm not so sure. I keep thinking about what I used to want, not the company, me, before the noise. Kade watched her carefully. And what did you want? To wake up in a house that felt like mine. To not have to prove myself every time I walked into a room. To have a life that didn't require armor. He held her gaze. You're not wearing any now. Her voice dropped. That's because you don't ask for it. Silence stretched between them, thick with something unnamed. Then quietly she said, What about you? What do you want, Kade? He looked away, out toward the garden, where the trees barely stirred in the breeze. My daughter to grow up knowing she's not missing anything. That just because her life doesn't look like other kids, it doesn't mean it's lacking. And maybe not to do it alone forever. Vanessa's throat tightened. You're not alone now. He turned back to her. Neither are you. Later, after they cleared the table and she walked him to the door, he paused with his hand on the knob. I got a call, he said, from a guy I used to work with. He's opening a restoration firm in the city. Wants me to come on as a partner. Vanessa's eyebrows lifted. That's big. Yeah, it is. The pay's more than I've ever made. But it'd mean long days, travel, and moving back into a life I thought I left behind. Her voice was quiet. Are you going to take it? I haven't decided yet, but I wanted you to know, because I'd be lying if I said it wasn't partly about you. Vanessa stepped closer. What do you mean? I've never met anyone who makes me question what success looks like. Until now. She reached out, her fingers brushing his. If you go, I'll understand, but I won't pretend it won't matter. He stared at her, like he was memorizing the way she looked in that moment barefoot, firelight catching in her hair, shadows playing against her cheekbones. I don't want to leave, he said. Not this, not you. The space between them vanished. His mouth met hers in a kiss that was quiet and certain, years of restraint melting into something fierce and real. Her hands slid up his chest, anchoring herself to something solid. When they parted, breathless, she whispered, "Then don't." A week later, the garden was transformed. The hedges trimmed, the path cleared, and a long table set beneath strings of soft lights. Kaia sat in the center with a crown of wildflowers on her head, proudly announcing that she'd planned the entire thing. Kade stood beside her, one hand resting protectively on her shoulder. Vanessa stepped out of the house wearing a deep navy dress, her hair woven into a loose braid. Her eyes found Kade immediately, and he crossed the lawn to meet her. You did all this, she asked, looking around at the candles, the polished glass, and the neighbors beginning to trickle in with dishes and bottles of wine. It was Kaia's idea. She said you needed a housewarming party. Vanessa smiled. It's perfect. He leaned in. Wait until you see what she has planned next. Kaia clapped her hands. It's time. The music faded, and Kaia stood atop a small stool, holding a folded piece of paper. This house used to be sad, she began, her voice strong and clear. But now it's not, because of my dad and Vanessa, and because we eat lunch together and plant things and feed geese and have cookies when it rains. So now this house is a home, and I hope it stays that way forever. The crowd applauded, and Vanessa's eyes shimmered. Kade stepped forward, lifting Kaia off the stool and into his arms. Then he turned to Vanessa. We talked about it, he said, and if the offer's still open. She blinked. What offer? Having dinner together, every night. She laughed through her tears. It is. He kissed her again, right there in front of everyone, with Kaia laughing between them and music rising in the background. And for the first time in a long, long time, everything felt exactly where it belonged. The first real snow came 2 weeks later, blanketing the estate in white. Vanessa stood by the bay window in the front parlor, arms folded, watching Kaia press tiny handprints into the frost that clung to the glass. Outside, Kade was clearing the driveway with a wide shovel, his breath visible in the crisp December air. The house was quiet, warm, lived in a way it hadn't been in years. Do you think you'll like it? Kaia asked suddenly, turning from the window. Vanessa looked down at the small box Kaia held out. Inside was a silver wristwatch, simple but elegant, with a black leather band and a tiny engraving on the underside. You're not doing it alone anymore. He'll love it, Vanessa said, kneeling down to help her wrap it. And he's going to pretend not to cry, but he will. Kaia giggled. He always says he's just tired when he tears up. Men do that, Vanessa said with a smile, even the strong ones. They spent the rest of the morning preparing for dinner. Not just any dinner, this one was different. It wasn't a party, not like before. No guests, no clinking glasses or long speeches. Just the three of them, the smell of rosemary chicken filling the air, and soft music playing from an old record player Vanessa had pulled from the attic. When Kade came inside, cheeks flushed from the cold, Kaia ran to meet him and tugged him toward the living room where the tree stood, lit and undecorated. We waited for you, she said, pointing at the boxes of ornaments. Kade looked at Vanessa. You actually let her wait. She insisted, Vanessa said it wasn't right to start without you. So they decorated together. Kaia chose the brightest ornaments for the highest branches, which Kade lifted her up to reach. Vanessa took her time with the delicate glass pieces, many of which had belonged to her mother. When the tree was done, they stepped back to admire it, the fire crackling behind them. There's one more thing, Vanessa said, for you. She handed Kade a small envelope. He opened it slowly, brows drawing together as he unfolded the papers inside. This is a business license, he said cautiously, for a restoration company. She nodded, in your name, with a startup grant. I pulled together the paperwork last week. Kade looked stunned. You did this. You said someone offered you a partnership, but think you were meant to build something of your own. He stared at the papers, then up at her. Vanessa, this is. No strings, she interrupted. You don't owe me a thing, but if you want a future here, it should be one you shape yourself. He set the envelope down and crossed the room slowly. You really believe I can make it work? I wouldn't have done it otherwise. His voice was hoarse when he spoke again. You gave me more than a house. You gave me a place to belong. She reached for him, her hands curling around his. And you reminded me I'm not just a good strategist or a CEO. I'm still capable of being someone's home, too. He kissed her then, deeply, like he finally knew he didn't have to hold anything back. And this time, there was no hesitation. No fear, just the certainty of something real. Later that night, after Kaia had fallen asleep curled up on the couch with her favorite blanket, Vanessa and Kade stood outside on the porch, snow falling softly around them. She wants to stay here for school, he said, slipping his arm around her waist. Said she wants to plant a real garden in the spring. She'll have it, Vanessa said. We'll build it together. He glanced down at her. You mean that? I do. They stood in silence for a long time, watching the snow gather on the hedges. Then he said, I never thought this would be my life. You, her, this house. Vanessa looked up at him. Neither did I, but I'm not letting it go. You won't have to. I'm not going anywhere. The next few months passed in quiet, steady rhythm. Winter turned to spring, and the garden bloomed in bursts of color. Kade's business grew quickly, referrals pouring in from neighbors and clients who trusted him with their homes. Vanessa helped him build a website, but refused to touch the books. You're in charge now, she said. I'm just here to ask too many questions. Kaia thrived. She joined a local art club, learned how to bake without burning the kitchen down, and insisted on labeling every single plant in the garden with hand-drawn signs. One Saturday morning, as they sat on the porch eating fresh scones and watching the sunrise, Kade reached into his jacket pocket. Vanessa raised a brow. If that's another wildflower ring Kaia made, I already have 3 on this hand. He chuckled. It's not from Kaia, it's from me. She froze as he opened the small velvet box. Inside was a ring unlike anything flashy or oversized. It was timeless, just like the life they were building. I don't need a ceremony, he said. I just need you. But if you want the whole thing, dress, music, vows, I'll give you that too. I just need to know I get to call you mine. She took the ring with trembling fingers, heart swelling in a way she hadn't thought possible. You already do, she whispered. But yes, yes to all of it. They kissed beneath the morning sky, surrounded by the chirping of birds and the scent of lavender from the garden beds below. And in that moment on a porch that had seen loneliness, then laughter, then love, Vanessa finally understood what it meant to be home. Forever,